The last thing I saw before the world shattered was the number 7. Not a lucky number, not a sign, just a cold, digital 7 on the clock next to my bed, glowing a toxic red in the darkness. Then, the wait came. It wasn't a gradual thing. It was instantaneous, like the universe had suddenly decided my chest was the perfect place to stack a few dozen invisible anvils. I tried to scream, but my lungs were clamped in a vice. My jaw was locked, my tongue a dead weight in my mouth. My eyes, however, were wide open, darting around my own bedroom, a room that had suddenly become the most terrifying place on earth. It was then that I saw him. The shadow in the corner of the room, the one that wasn't a shadow. It was darker than the dark, a void in the shape of a man, tall and impossibly thin. I had felt this paralysis before, but this was different. He wasn't just standing there this time. He was showing me something. The room around me began to dissolve, not like a dream, but like film burning under a hot lamp. The smell of ozone and rain filled my locked lungs. I saw streetlights blurring past, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of windshield wipers fighting a losing battle. And I heard her voice, Sarah's voice, singing along softly to that one indie song she loved. Then, a flash of blindingly bright headlights from the side, the screech of tires, the horrifying, final sound of metal twisting around itself. I saw a spray of shattered glass sparkle like a constellation of dying stars, and through it all, her face, frozen in a mask of shock and terror. And then, I was back in my bed, gasping for air, sweat stinging my eyes, the shadow in the corner gone. My own scream was finally tearing its way out of my throat. This is a new channel with incredible stories every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. My name is Leo, I'm 28, and by trade, I'm an architect. I deal in logic, in physics, in things that are solid and measurable. My entire life is built on blueprints, on plans, on the idea that if you follow the rules, the structure will hold. I love precision. I love the clean lines of a well-designed building, the satisfying click of a camera shutter capturing a perfect moment. Photography is my escape. It's how I freeze time, how I impose order on the chaos of the world. I capture moments that have passed. I don't predict ones that are yet to come. You have to understand this about me. I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghosts or reads his horoscope. I believe in stress-induced hallucinations, in the brain playing tricks on you when you're exhausted. And I was exhausted. We were working on a huge new downtown development project, and my days were a blur of caffeine, CAD software, and not enough sleep. So when I first started experiencing sleep paralysis a few months ago, I rationalized it. I read all the articles, the medical journals. It's a REM cycle glitch. Your brain wakes up before your body does. The feeling of a presence, the demon, as it's often called, is just your mind trying to explain the terrifying sensation of being trapped in your own flesh. It's a trick of the light, a product of fear. It made sense. It was logical. And for a while, that was enough. The first few times were just that. Pressure, fear, a vague sense of a dark shape that would vanish the moment I could finally move a finger or a toe. Scary, yes, but explainable. I told my girlfriend Sarah about it, and she was incredible. She'd hold me, tell me it was just my body's way of telling me to slow down, and even bought me one of those weighted blankets, hoping it would help. The first time it changed was about 2 months ago. The paralysis hit, same as always. The weight, the fear, the helplessness. But the shadow in the corner, it shifted. It felt like it leaned in, and a thought, not a sound, bloomed in my mind, an image so clear it was like a photograph. It was a vase, a specific cobalt blue vase, tall and slender, filled with white lilies. And then I saw it falling in slow motion, tumbling from a table and shattering on our hardwood floor, water and petals exploding outwards. The vision lasted only a second. Then the paralysis broke and I was sitting bolt upright, my heart hammering. It was just a nightmare, I told myself. A weird, specific nightmare. The next day was Saturday. We were having a lazy morning when my mom called to say she was dropping by. She brought a housewarming gift, even though we'd lived in our apartment for over a year. She unwrapped it from the tissue paper, and my stomach dropped. It was the vase. The exact same cobalt, blue, tall, slender vase. I just stood there, staring at it. Sarah loved it, gushing about how perfect it was. She filled it with water and placed it on the small table by the window. I couldn't stop looking at it. I was so on edge, so quiet, that Sarah asked me what was wrong. I just shook my head, unable to explain the cold dread creeping up my spine.
It's just a vase, Leo,
she said, laughing. Later that afternoon, as she was dusting, she turned too quickly, her elbow catching the edge of the table. I watched, as if in a trance, as the vase tipped. It fell in slow motion, tumbling end over end, and shattered on the hardwood floor. The explosion of water and petals was identical to the image in my head. Identical. Sarah was apologetic, devastated about my mom's gift. I barely heard her. I was just staring at the mess, at the proof. Coincidence. It had to be a coincidence. A 1 in a million chance. My mind was just connecting dots that weren't there, a phenomenon called confirmation bias. I had a nightmare about a vase breaking, and then a vase broke. My brain was just filling in the details to make it seem more prophetic than it was. That was the logical explanation. That was the blueprint. But the foundation was starting to feel unstable. The sleep paralysis episodes started coming more frequently after that, and with them, the visions. They were never huge, world-altering events. They were small, insignificant, but always accurate. I saw my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, slipping on a patch of ice on his front steps. The next morning, I saw him walking with a limp. I had a flash of my boss, a stern man named Arthur, spilling a cup of coffee all over a set of crucial blueprints. 2 days later, I walked into the office to the smell of burnt coffee and Arthur furiously dabbing at a stained schematic with paper towels. I started keeping a journal, a secret one, hidden under a loose floorboard in my closet. I'd wake up, gasping, my hands shaking so much I could barely write, and I'd scribble down the details. A stray dog, with a distinctive patch of white fur over its eye running into the street, a specific model of a green car getting a parking ticket, the power going out on our block during a thunderstorm. And one by one, over the next few days, these tiny, meaningless prophecies would come true. The rational part of my mind, the architect, was screaming. It was fighting for control, throwing every logical explanation it could find at the problem. You're overtired. You're stressed. Your subconscious is picking up on tiny cues you're not aware of, and constructing these predictions in your sleep. But the other part of me, the primal, terrified part, knew better. This wasn't my subconscious. This was something else, something external. The shadow wasn't just a trick of the light anymore. It felt ancient, intelligent, and malevolent. It wasn't helping me. It was toying with me, showing me the strings of the universe just to prove that I was nothing more than a puppet. The strain started to show. I was perpetually exhausted, with dark circles under my eyes. I was jumpy, irritable. I stopped enjoying my photography. How could I focus on capturing the past when my mind was being force-fed the future? The breaking point with Sarah came on a Tuesday night. I had another episode, this one more visceral than the others. I saw Sarah's sister, Chloe, on the phone, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. The vision was so raw, so full of grief, that I woke up with a sob. I had to tell Sarah. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I sat her down on the edge of our bed and told her everything. The journal, the vase, the coffee stain, the visions. I expected her to be scared, or at least intrigued. Instead, her face filled with a deep, pitying concern that was almost worse than disbelief.
Leo, honey.
She said, her voice gentle, like she was talking to a child. You're burning out. This job is killing you. We all have weird dreams when we're this stressed.
It's not dreams, Sarah. It's real. It happens every single time.
Okay.
She said, holding her hands up.
So, what did you see tonight? What's gonna happen to Chloe?
I don't know.
I admitted, my voice cracking.
I just saw her crying. Something bad is going to happen.
The next day, I was a wreck. I called Chloe twice, making up flimsy excuses to check on her. She sounded fine, if a little confused by my sudden concern. I spent the entire day waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nothing happened. By evening, I felt like a fool. Sarah came home and gave me that look again.
See? Chloe's fine. It was just a nightmare, Leo. You need to take a break. Maybe you should talk to someone. A professional.
The word hung in the air between us. A professional. A therapist. She thought I was losing my mind. The argument that followed was the worst we'd ever had. I felt so utterly alone, so betrayed. The one person I thought would believe me, or at least try to, was telling me I was crazy. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, defeated and numb, Sarah's phone rang. It was Chloe. I watched as Sarah's face went from confusion to shock to grief. Her hand went to her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. I didn't need to hear the words. I already knew. Chloe's beloved golden retriever, a dog she'd had for 12 years, had passed away in his sleep overnight. A peaceful, painless end for a very old dog, but a devastating loss for her. Sarah hung up the phone, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks, looking exactly as she had in my vision. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The validation felt disgusting. It wasn't a victory, it was a curse. That was the moment everything tilted. The fear became real for her, too. But it didn't bring us closer. It pushed us further apart. She looked at me differently, with a mixture of awe and terror, as if I were the harbinger of these events, not just a witness. Life became a minefield. Every night, I was terrified to go to sleep. Every morning, I was terrified of what the day would bring. The visions continued, small things, but now they were tainted with a new layer of dread. Have you ever experienced something you just can't explain, something that blurred the line between reality and a nightmare? You feel like you're losing your grip, and no one understands. The logical part of me was still fighting, but it was a losing battle. My carefully constructed world of blueprints and certainties was collapsing. And then came the night of the big one, the one that started all of this. The night the demon showed me the car crash. It wasn't just an image this time, it was a full sensory experience. I felt the rumble of the engine through the seat. I smelled the cheap air freshener Sarah kept hanging from her rear view mirror. I heard the specific song on the radio, First Day of My Life, by Bright Eyes, our song, and I saw the details with horrifying clarity. It was a Friday night. It was raining. The intersection was Oak Street and 4th Avenue, a junction she drove through every day on her way home from her evening yoga class. A large, red pickup truck would run the light. I saw the make and model. I saw the dent in its front bumper. I saw Sarah's face, illuminated by the dashboard lights, turning towards the glare just a second before impact. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, my body shaking so violently the whole bed was moving. Sarah woke up with me, trying to calm me down, but I couldn't stop shaking. I told her what I saw, every single detail, and I saw the terror in her eyes deepen into a kind of resignation. She believed me now. Oh, she definitely believed me. The date of the vision was Friday, October 26th. That was 10 days away. 10 days to live, with that image burned into my mind. I was terrified. The vision was so vivid, so real. My logical mind was at war with what I saw. What would you have done in my place? Write it in the comments. Would you dismiss it as the ultimate stress-induced nightmare, or would you treat it as a death sentence you had to somehow outrun? I chose to fight. I refused to be a passive observer to the worst moment of my life. I became obsessed. I took the day off work and drove to Oak and 4th. I sat there for hours, watching the traffic patterns, the timing of the lights. I photographed every red pickup truck that passed, my hands shaking. I was a man possessed. My plan was simple. Get Sarah out of the city. If she wasn't there, it couldn't happen. I booked a surprise weekend trip for us. A beautiful, secluded cabin in the mountains, 3 hours away. We would leave that Friday morning and not come back until Sunday. I told her it was to help us reconnect, to get away from the stress. She knew the real reason, of course. She agreed immediately, her relief palpable. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I felt like I was taking back control. I was smarter than the shadow. I was changing the blueprint. The week leading up to the trip was agonizingly slow. Every night I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, terrified to close my eyes. But the visions had stopped. The demon was silent. Maybe my plan had worked. Maybe just the act of defying the future was enough to change it. Friday morning arrived, bright and sunny, a stark contrast to the rain in my vision. Our bags were packed. The car was loaded. We were about to walk out the door when Sarah's phone rang. It was her boss. A massive server at their company had crashed overnight, wiping out critical data. It was an all-hands-on-deck emergency. She had to go in. She was the project lead. There was no one else who could fix.
I'm so sorry, Leo,
she said, her voice choked with disappointment and fear.
I have to go. I can't just let them.
My hope crumbled into dust. It was happening. It was fate, a cruel, deliberate force, course-correcting. "No," I said, my voice low and tight. You can't go." We fought. She called me controlling, irrational. I pleaded with her, begged her, my voice rising with panic. "Just stay home. Call in sick. Anything. Just don't drive today." I sounded like a madman. I knew I did, and in my desperation, I pushed her away. She grabbed her keys, her face a mask of anger and hurt.
"I can't live like this, Leo."
She whispered, her eyes filled with tears.
"I can't live in your nightmare."
And she walked out the door. I knew she'd still go to her yoga class that evening. It was her one release, her way of coping with the stress I was putting her through. And to get there, she had to drive through the intersection of Oak and 4th. I spent the rest of the day in a fugue state, pacing my apartment like a caged animal. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I could only see that image, over and over. The headlights, the glass, her face. The clock on the wall was a time bomb, ticking down to the inevitable. 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Her class started at 7. It ended at 8. She would be driving home around 8:15. As the sun began to set, the sky clouded over. A light drizzle began to fall, pattering against the window pane. Rain. Of course, it was raining. At 7:45, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys, my mind a blank slate of pure terror. I didn't know what I was going to do. Intercept her? Block the road? Cause a smaller, less fatal accident myself to stop her? I just had to get there. I drove like a maniac, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I got to Oak and 4th at 8:10 p.m. I pulled over a block away, my heart feeling like it was going to explode out of my chest. The rain was coming down harder now. The streetlights reflected off the wet asphalt, creating blurry halos of light. It was exactly like the vision. I scanned the street, my eyes darting back and forth. Then I saw it, Sarah's small blue sedan, approaching the intersection. And from the cross street, I saw the headlights. A big, red pickup truck. It was moving too fast. The light for it was yellow, then red. It wasn't slowing down. Time seemed to stretch, to warp. Everything happened at once. I slammed my hand on my horn, a long, desperate blast. I flicked my high beams on and off, trying to create a distraction, anything to catch her eye. Sarah's car entered the intersection. The red truck barreled through its red light. My scream was trapped in my throat, a silent, agonizing howl. But then, something impossible happened. At the very last second, the truck driver must have seen her. He wrenched the wheel hard to the right. The truck swerved violently, its tires screeching on the wet pavement, missing Sarah's car by inches. It jumped the curb, plowing into a thick metal lamppost with a sickening crunch of metal. Sarah's car was fine. She slammed on her brakes, stalled in the middle of the intersection, completely unharmed. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The wave of relief that washed over me was so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. I did it. I saved her. I had stared into the face of fate and made it blink. I threw my car door open and ran to her, my legs shaking. She was pale and trembling, but she was alive. We clung to each other in the middle of the street, the rain plastering our hair to our faces, the air filled with the hiss of a broken radiator and the smell of gasoline. People were getting out of their cars. Someone was calling 911. Paramedics were on their way. I held Sarah, whispering that it was okay, that she was safe. And then I looked past her, towards the wreck. The driver's side door of the red truck was crumpled, but a small crowd had managed to pry it open. 2 people were helping the driver out. He was dazed, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he seemed to be conscious. He stumbled out of the truck and into the glare of the streetlights, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't just a random person. I knew his face. It was tired, gaunt, with deeper lines around the eyes and a touch of gray at the temples. But it was unmistakably, impossibly my own. It was me, an older, more broken version of me. As the paramedics arrived and started to attend to him, he looked up, his eyes scanning the crowd until they locked with mine. There was no confusion in his gaze, only a deep, hollow recognition. And in that split second, I saw it. Standing right behind the paramedics, just at the edge of the light, was the shadow, the tall, thin void from my bedroom. It was looking directly at me, and it gave a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture of finality, of a job well done. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The demon hadn't shown me Sarah's death. It hadn't even shown me an accident I was meant to prevent. It had shown me a glimpse of my own future. A future where, driven mad by the visions and desperate to save the person I loved, I would become the very instrument of the disaster. The vision wasn't a warning. It was a script, and I had played my part perfectly. If you've made it this far, you're a true story lover. Hit that subscribe button, because what I learned next changed everything. I never told Sarah. How could I? How could I explain that the man who almost killed her was a future version of the man who was holding her? She believes to this day that some drunk driver almost ruined our lives, and that by some miracle I was there. Our relationship healed, in a way. The shared trauma bonded us, but a piece of me is gone forever. I am haunted. The sleep paralysis continues. It comes and goes. But the visions have stopped. The demon is just a presence now, a silent watcher in the corner of my room. It never shows me anything anymore. I think it doesn't have to. It already showed me the most important thing, that my attempts to control my destiny were the very things that sealed it. Was it a demon? A psychological break? A self-fulfilling prophecy born from my own terror? I honestly don't know. Maybe the vision wasn't literal. Maybe the man in the truck was a symbol for the death of my old self, the logical, rational architect who believed he could blueprint his own life. All I know is that I looked into the abyss, and the abyss showed me my own reflection. Did I do the right thing by trying to intervene, or did I just play into its hands? Sometimes, I think the real horror isn't knowing that something terrible is going to happen. It's knowing that you're the one who's going to make it happen, and you're powerless to stop it. Share your thoughts or theories in the comments. I read them. All.